Jephthah's story begins in the shadow of rejection. Born in the land of Gilead, he was the son of a man named Gilead and a woman whose name history does not record. His mother was not Gilead's wife but a prostitute, a fact that would haunt Jephthah from the moment he drew his first breath. In a society where lineage and legitimacy were paramount, Jephthah's birth was a stain on his father's household. His half-brothers, born of Gilead's lawful wife, grew up resenting him, their disdain festering like an open wound. As a boy, Jephthah was keenly aware of his status. He was the child of shame, the living reminder of his father's indiscretion. His brothers mocked him, their words sharp as daggers, and the servants whispered behind his back. Even his father, though he provided for him, could not hide his discomfort in Jephthah's presence. The boy grew up in a house that was not a home, surrounded by people who saw him as an intruder. When Jephthah came of age, his brothers' resentment boiled over. "You shall not inherit anything in our father's house," they declared, their voices dripping with venom. "You are the son of another woman." With those words, they cast him out, stripping him of his birthright and banishing him from the only life he had ever known. Jephthah, now a young man, found himself alone, an outcast in a world that had no place for him. Jephthah wandered the wilderness, a man without a home or a purpose. But in the barren hills of Tob, he found an unlikely refuge. The region was a haven for the desperate and the disreputable, fugitives, mercenaries, and men who, like Jephthah, had been cast aside by society. Among these outcasts, Jephthah discovered a sense of belonging he had never known. Here, his past did not define him. Here, he was judged not by his lineage but by his deeds. It was among these men that Jephthah's natural leadership began to emerge. He was strong, courageous, and fiercely loyal, qualities that earned him the respect of his fellow outcasts. They began to look to him for guidance, and Jephthah, who had spent his life yearning for acceptance, found purpose in leading them. Under his command, they became a formidable band, raiding enemy territories and defending their own. Jephthah's name began to spread, not as the son of a prostitute, but as a warrior of renown. But even as he found success among the outcasts, Jephthah could not escape the shadow of his past. The rejection of his family gnawed at him, a wound that refused to heal. He longed for redemption, not just in the eyes of men, but in the eyes of God. He yearned to prove that he was more than the sum of his origins, that he was worthy of a greater calling. Years passed, and Jephthah's reputation continued to grow. Meanwhile, the Israelites, who had once again turned away from God, found themselves oppressed by the Ammonites. The enemy ravaged their lands, and the people cried out for deliverance. Desperate, the elders of Gilead remembered Jephthah, the outcast who had become a warrior. They sought him out in Tob, humbling themselves before the man they had once rejected. "Come and be our commander," they pleaded, "that we may fight against the Ammonites." Jephthah's initial response was bitter. "Did you not hate me and drive me out of my father's house?" he demanded. "Why do you come to me now, when you are in distress?" The elders, chastened, admitted their wrongdoing. "We have come to you because we need you," they said. "If you lead us against the Ammonites, you will be our head, over all the inhabitants of Gilead." Jephthah, torn between his desire for redemption and his lingering resentment, agreed. But he made them swear an oath before the Lord, binding them to their promise. With that, Jephthah returned to the land of his birth, not as an outcast, but as a leader. Jephthah's first act as commander was to seek the Lord's favor. He knew that victory would not come through strength alone but through divine intervention. As he prepared to face the Ammonites, he made a vow, a desperate, fateful vow that would alter the course of his life. "If you give the Ammonites into my hands," Jephthah declared, "whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering." The vow was rash, born of a heart that sought to prove its devotion. Jephthah, who had spent his life striving for acceptance, was willing to offer anything to secure God's favor. But in his fervor, he did not consider the cost. Jephthah led his men into battle with the courage and skill that had made him a legend. The Spirit of the Lord was upon him, and he routed the Ammonites, delivering Israel from their oppression. The victory was complete, and Jephthah returned to Mizpah, his heart swelling with triumph. But as he approached his home, his joy turned to horror. The first to greet him was not a servant or an animal but his only child, his beloved daughter. She came out to meet him, dancing with timbrels, her face radiant with pride in her father's victory. Jephthah's heart shattered. He tore his clothes and cried out in anguish. "Oh no, my daughter! You have brought me down, and I am devastated. For I have made a vow to the Lord, and I cannot break it." His daughter, though stunned, responded with remarkable courage. "My father," she said, "you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me as you have promised, now that the Lord has avenged you of your enemies." But she asked for one thing: 2 months to mourn her virginity with her friends in the mountains. Jephthah granted her request, and she departed with her companions. For 2 months, they wept on the mountainsides, mourning the life she would never have. When she returned, Jephthah fulfilled his vow, though the cost was unimaginable. Jephthah's story is one of triumph and tragedy, a testament to the complexity of divine calling. He rose from rejection to become a deliverer of his people, a man whose faith and courage secured Israel's victory. Yet his rash vow, born of a heart that sought to prove its worth, led to unspeakable sorrow. Jephthah's journey reminds us that redemption is not without cost. His life was marked by both divine favor and human frailty, a reminder that even those called by God are not immune to the consequences of their choices. His story challenges us to consider the weight of our vows and the depth of our faith. In the end, Jephthah's legacy is one of both triumph and tragedy. He was a man who rose above his origins to become a leader, yet his story is tinged with the sorrow of sacrifice. His life is a poignant reminder that the path of faith is often fraught with both joy and pain, and that even in our darkest moments, God's purposes are at work. Jephthah's daughter is remembered not for her death but for her courage and devotion. Her willingness to honor her father's vow, even at the cost of her own life, stands as a testament to her faith. Each year, the young women of Israel would go out to mourn her, a tradition that kept her memory alive. As for Jephthah, his story serves as a mirror, reflecting the complexities of human nature and the divine. He was a man of great faith and great flaws, a leader who rose from rejection to redemption, yet whose life was marked by both triumph and tragedy. His journey reminds us that even in our brokenness, God can use us for his purposes, but it also calls us to consider the weight of our choices and the depth of our devotion. In the end, Jephthah's story is not just his own but a reflection of the human condition, a tale of rejection, redemption, sacrifice, and the enduring hope that even in our darkest moments, we are not beyond the reach of God's grace. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful Bible story. And don't forget to share this with someone who needs to hear it today.